"Get out of the car, you arrogant delinquent, you rat," growled Sergeant Derek Sullivan, his words cutting through the silence of the Meadowbrook neighborhood in Dallas in the late afternoon. Jennifer Hayes sat firmly in the driver's seat of her red Honda Civic, her hands visible on the steering wheel and her voice calm, too calm for the kind of woman he thought he could intimidate. In seconds, he ripped her from the car, pushing her against the hot hood before locking his arm around her neck. The neighbors began to come out of their houses shocked while she struggled to breathe, her vision blurring. But then, with the last of her strength, Jennifer tore open the coat, revealing an FBI badge that gleamed in the sun, and along with it, the end of the sergeant's career. Before we continue this story, please comment on which city or country you are watching from. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now is the time. This is just the first twist in a story that will surprise you. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the sidewalks of the Meadowbrook neighborhood in Dallas. Jennifer Hayes's red Honda Civic gleamed in the reflection of porch lights and the golden glow of the sunset. Every impeccable detail of that car reflected the care she had devoted to it since the death of her husband Marcus. The soft music from the radio ceased when she turned off the ignition, plunging the interior into a comfortable silence, until the sharp sound of sirens and the glare of red and blue lights shattered the tranquility. Sergeant Derek Sullivan's patrol car suddenly appeared in the rearview mirror, so close that Jennifer barely had time to react before the lights flashed like an irrefutable order. She had chosen that spot carefully, well lit, cameras visible, witnesses nearby, exactly as she had learned in FBI training. "Get out of the vehicle immediately," Sullivan's voice echoed, cold and authoritative, through the silent houses. Neighbors leaned out of their windows, others opened their doors, watching with tense expressions. Jennifer kept her movements slow and calculated. "I'm getting my driver's license," he announced, with the calm of someone who has overcome fear. Her hands slid carefully toward the bag on the passenger seat. Suddenly, the driver's side door was flung open so forcefully that the car shuddered. The sergeant's face appeared, red, tense, his eyes blazing with fury. "This vehicle is listed as stolen. Get out now." "There must be some mistake," Jennifer said without changing her tone. "This was my husband's car." "Now it's registered in my name," he spat. "Please, sir, let me show you my ID." "Shut up!" he roared, grabbing her wrist brutally. His fingers dug into her skin, leaving red marks. Before she could get away on her own, she was ripped from the seat, her body slamming against the hot hood of the car. The metal burned her skin. He twisted her arm behind her back. "Stop resisting!" he shouted, even though she was motionless. "I'm not resisting," she managed to say, choking back tears. "If you'll let me show you my ID." The grip tightened, and within seconds his arm was around her neck. Jennifer felt the air leave her, the world spin. Her free hand instinctively rose to her throat, trying to create space to breathe. Across the street, Rachel Torres, a rideshare driver, watched paralyzed, her phone trembling in her hands as she recorded. She had just parked to start her shift when she witnessed the violent encounter. Now, caught between fear and outrage, she was recording every second. As Jennifer struggled against despair, dark spots danced in her vision. The sound of sirens grew louder, mingling with the screams and murmurs of neighbors gathering around. "My ID," he whispered, with what little air he had left. "Left pocket. FBI." But Sullivan ignored him. His arm tightened even more. "Nice try, young lady," he growled, his hot, acidic breath close to her ear. Jennifer's legs gave way. Her consciousness began to slip, and her last thought was the memory of Dorothy, her mother, waiting for a call that would never come, to confirm that her daughter had arrived home safely. Across the street, Rachel recorded everything. The moment Jennifer collapsed, the moment the second police car entered the street, the collective shock of those witnessing the abuse in real time. The doorbell cameras recorded without blinking, their small red dots illuminating the twilight, silent witnesses to an undeniable violence. The sound of police radios, the creaking of car doors, the tense voices of residents, all mingled with the distant hum of lawnmowers. Sergeant Sullivan maintained the chokehold, his face tense, his jaw clenched, as if displaying strength were part of the uniform. His badge reflected the light of the setting sun, a cruel reminder of the authority he wielded as a weapon. When the second patrol car pulled onto the street, its tires screeched on the asphalt, and red and blue lights bathed everything in frenetic colors. A portrait of a country on the brink of moral collapse. Officer Brandon Walsh jumped out of the patrol car, his rookie enthusiasm vanishing as soon as he understood what he was seeing. His eyes widened at the scene. Sergeant Derek Sullivan was holding an unconscious woman in a chokehold, her body hanging limply over the hood of a red car. "What are you doing?" Brandon shouted, already reaching for his cell phone to make sure he was recording. "Suspected stolen vehicle," Sullivan replied, without even looking at his colleague. "He's resisting." "Resisting?" Brandon's voice faltered, incredulous. The street in the Meadowbrook neighborhood was already full of neighbors with their cell phones raised, filming as if the act of recording were the only form of justice. On the other side, Rachel Torres positioned herself better, her hands steady despite the tears that were beginning to well up. The pressure on Jennifer Hayes' neck eased for a moment as the sergeant adjusted his position. The small relief was enough. Her eyes slowly opened, consciousness returning with a burning pain. Her training had taken its toll. With her free arm, she pulled at her coat forcefully, and the gold FBI badge gleamed in the yellowish light of the streetlights. Time seemed to stand still. Officer Brandon held his breath. He recognized the seal immediately. He had studied those credentials at the academy. He knew there was no possible copy. His body camera recorded everything, humming in the heavy silence. "This is FBI," he murmured, before raising his voice. "Sergeant Sullivan, she's a federal agent. Release her now." Sullivan's face paled. The arrogance that sustained him crumbled, replaced by a paralyzing fear. "It's false. It must be false," he stammered, his voice trembling. But Brandon was already speaking on the radio. "Central, this is Unit 214 Elm Street. I request the presence of a supervisor. Situation involving an FBI agent." Jennifer could barely stand, her legs trembling, her throat burning. Each breath was accompanied by a pang of pain and cold rage, the rage of a woman trained to act, not to bow down. The crowd murmured, cell phones recording, notifications popping up in real time. The radio crackled. Lieutenant Greg Mitchell's voice came through steadily. "All units, retreat immediately. Release the individual, I repeat, release and retreat." Sullivan's arm finally gave way. Jennifer staggered forward, leaning against the car. With a restrained movement, she brought her fingers to her throat, feeling the aching skin. Then she reached into her coat pocket and pulled out her credentials wallet. The leather slammed shut against the hood. The sound echoed like a gunshot. She opened her wallet firmly, displaying her official FBI badge. "Sergeant Sullivan," he said, his voice hoarse but sharp, "you have just assaulted a federal agent in the line of duty." He took a step back. Her face was now fully visible under the flashing lights of the police cars. Every camera, every cell phone, every lens surrounded him. "I trust your body camera recorded everything," Jennifer added, cold as steel. Sullivan's gaze darted from Brandon to the crowd, to the cameras in the houses, to the reflection of his own badge, which now weighed like lead on his chest. "Oh my God, it's over for me," she whispered, too quietly to hide her despair. The sound of tires screeching across the asphalt announced the arrival of the paramedics and Lieutenant Mitchell's patrol car. Lights flashed red and blue, reflecting off the windows and the Honda Civic, the car that had been the trigger for everything. Jennifer sat on the sidewalk, exhausted, letting her mask of professionalism slip for a second. Her body trembled, but her gaze remained steady. The paramedics approached carefully, while in the background, Sergeant Sullivan was led away in handcuffs, his face blank, his fate sealed. The crowd erupted in murmurs, and the flashes began. Videos spread across social media in real time, accompanied by indignant captions. Rachel Torres, still filming, had tears streaming down her face. But she didn't stop. Beside her, Officer Brandon Walsh remained motionless, the body camera still recording, his gaze torn between horror and the shame of witnessing for the first time the true cost of abuse of power. The paramedics arrived quickly, their voices firm and professional, moving in perfect synchrony as they assessed Jennifer Hayes' vital signs. The dark marks on her throat, purple, clear, impossible to ignore, formed a necklace of evidence against Sergeant Derek Sullivan. One of them carefully took photos, following protocol in assault cases. Around them, more patrol cars lined up, the alternating flashing of red and blue lights transforming Elm Street into a stage of tension and public shame. The neighbors had left their homes. Entire families crowded onto the sidewalks and porches, cell phones raised, recording everything. A man in a white t-shirt and flip-flops, standing at his garage door, watched silently, his face torn between indignation and astonishment. The quiet street in the Meadowbrook neighborhood had never seen anything like it. Dawn filtered through the thin curtains of the room at Parkland Memorial Hospital, tinging the floor with pale light. Jennifer sat on the bed, her throat wrapped in bandages, the beeping of the monitor marking the rhythm of the life she had almost lost. Beside her, the warm hand of Dorothy, her mother, squeezed hers with tenderness and fear. The two watched the TV in silence. The morning news replayed the images that had shocked the country. Shocking images show the moment a police officer assaults an FBI agent during a routine stop. On screen, the video showed Jennifer's body losing strength, the glint of the badge revealed, the panicked look on the attacker's face. Dorothy's grip tightened. "My dear, I can't stand to see this anymore," she said, her eyes red and her voice trembling. "Every time they pass by, all I see is my daughter being hurt." "I'm fine, Mum," Jennifer replied, her voice hoarse and weak. "I'm here." The doctor had warned that the injuries would take weeks to disappear, but what she carried wasn't just physical pain, it was the determination not to let it go unpunished. A light knock on the door broke the silence. FBI Supervisor Claire Anderson entered, carrying a thick brown paper folder under her arm. Despite her firm posture, her gaze betrayed concern. "Agent Hayes," he said, sitting down. "How are you?" "Ready to get back to work," Jennifer replied, trying to straighten up, ignoring her mother's protective hand on her shoulder. Claire took a deep breath, resting her elbows on her knees. "That's what we need to talk about. The department will file a formal complaint, but the process will be delicate." She placed the folder on the table. "My advice, keep a low profile. Let internal matters take care of the rest." Jennifer shook her head, feeling the tug of the ribbon around her neck. "With all due respect, Supervisor, I want to file the complaint myself. This police officer needs to be held accountable for his actions." "Jennifer," Claire lowered her voice, "you know how these things are. The union will unite. They'll try to discredit you." "Let them try," Jennifer replied firmly, her eyes gleaming. "I have 20 years of clean service and a complete record. I'm not backing down." Dorothy squeezed her daughter's hand, overcome with emotion. "Tell them, my daughter, tell them." Claire sighed, a slight pride escaping behind her professional tone. "Okay, I'll start the paperwork, but be prepared." This could get ugly. A new knock on the door caught the attention of the three women. Rachel Torres entered slowly, her face tired, her eyes sunken as if she hadn't slept since the previous night. "Sorry to interrupt," she said nervously, holding her cell phone. "I just wanted to make sure you were okay. I saw everything. I recorded everything." Jennifer motioned for her to come closer. "You did the right thing, Rachel. Thank you for not leaving." "I was afraid," she confessed, her voice breaking, "but even more afraid of what might happen if no one saw the truth." Claire Anderson nodded. "Has the police tried to contact you?" "3 times. I didn't answer." "Intelligent," the supervisor replied. "We'll officially record your statement. And if you feel threatened, we can arrange protection." Rachel took a deep breath, visibly relieved. "Thank you. I just want this to be resolved." After she left, Jennifer insisted on discussing internal matters. Despite her mother's objections, she exchanged her hospital gown for the formal clothes Dorothy had brought from home. The simple act of donning her military uniform restored her strength. The office of Inspector Nathan Garrett, who was in charge of the investigation, was small and windowless, but Jennifer entered with her head held high. "I want all recordings to be preserved," he said firmly. "Body cameras, patrol cars, doorbells, residential security guards, everything." "Of course, Agent Hayes," Garrett replied, typing quickly. "No files are going missing this time." "We are already collecting all available evidence," said Inspector Nathan Garrett as he typed. "And I want confirmation that the records of previous complaints against Sergeant Derek Sullivan are protected. No mistaken filings," Jennifer Hayes replied, her gaze steady. The typing stopped. "This may require authorization from a superior." "Then ask," she said dryly, "because this time it won't go unpunished." Hours later, exhausted but driven by a cold determination, Jennifer returned to her apartment in the Meadowbrook neighborhood. The space seemed quieter than ever, heavy after the chaos of the day. Her throat throbbed with each sip of painkiller. She sat at her desk, running her fingers over her FBI badge. The cold metal against her skin rekindled the memory of everything she had lived through and the reminder of who she was. "This time, he messed with the wrong person," he murmured to the dark room. She turned on the computer. The blue light from the screen illuminated her face, revealing the yellowish bruises beneath the silk scarf. She began opening reports and files. The act of gathering data, of searching for patterns, made her breathe easier. It was her refuge and her weapon. Dorothy, her mother, had insisted on sleeping there, but Jennifer had refused. She needed to be alone. She needed to remember that she wasn't a victim, but a researcher. The sound of the keyboard filled the silence, punctuated only by the hum of the coffee maker and the distant murmur of the news. Sunlight streamed into the kitchen, staining the granite countertop with golden hues. Then the presenter's voice interrupted his thoughts. 2 days after the controversial police encounter involving an FBI agent, the body camera footage of Sergeant Sullivan remains unavailable due to an alleged technical failure in the department's servers. The coffee spilled over the rim of the mug when she slammed it down on the table. "Technical glitch, my foot," he muttered, staring at the screen. The news report showed the facade of the Dallas Police Department. According to spokesman Lieutenant Kevin Barnes, the videos were lost during a routine upload to the internal system. The cause was reportedly a timeout issue on the servers. Jennifer huffed, pushing away the plate with the half-eaten toast. She opened her encrypted laptop and typed in her password to access the digital compliance records. She was familiar with the system. She had audited the corporation's databases 2 years prior. The software used for storage was the Guardian system, developed by the Department of Public Safety, a system with triple redundancy, automatic backup, and local caching on the cameras. He reasoned that a total data loss would only occur in 2 situations: multiple and simultaneous failures. Deliberate adulteration and she was betting on the second one. She accessed the public metadata that tracked the upload times of the body cameras. She wrote a quick script, analyzing the logs. The screen began to fill with lines of data until something made her stop. A 7-minute window where all uploads had failed simultaneously. Not only Sergeant Sullivan's, but also those of his colleagues and 2 support vehicles. Jennifer's heart raced. She recognized that pattern. I'd written about this in a technical report years earlier, a cascading timeout exploit capable of erasing specific intervals if someone knew the server's cycles. It was precise, surgical, and never accidental. She picked up her cell phone. She searched for a contact in her list until she found the name she needed, Tyler Brennan, an IT analyst at the Department of Public Safety, someone she had met during the audits. A reserved, ethical man, but always uncomfortable around superiors. She called 4 times before hearing his voice, low and tense. "Jennifer, I saw everything. Are you okay?" "I am," she replied directly. "I need to ask you about the upload logs from Tuesday night. There's a pattern that doesn't make sense." The silence on the other end was long. She could hear his breathing, heavy and hesitant. "Tyler, please," he insisted. "You know it's not a coincidence." He sighed. "Jennifer, I shouldn't be talking about this. We've been ordered not to discuss technical details of the incident." "Orders from whom?" Another break. "From the department head and from union representatives. They are conducting an internal investigation." Jennifer zoomed in on the graph on the monitor. The gap was there, exact, constant. "This was done manually, wasn't it?" she asked coldly. On the other end of the line, Tyler's silence was the clearest confirmation she could have received. Tyler Brennan's heavy breathing on the other end of the line confirmed what Jennifer Hayes already knew. "How did you find that out?" he asked, his voice trembling. "Because I was the one who wrote the report that pointed out exactly that vulnerability," she replied calmly. "Someone used the Guardian system's timeout flaw to delete the files." She softened her tone. "I'm not asking you to confess anything, Tyler. I just need to know if I'm right." Silence. She heard the creaking of a chair, perhaps him checking if anyone was nearby. "Well," he murmured, "some of the timings were altered manually. That's all I can say. That's enough." "Thank you, Tyler." "Jennifer," his voice wavered, "please be careful. This goes far beyond Sergeant Sullivan." When she hung up, Jennifer stood there staring at the illuminated computer screen. The evidence was there, cold, mathematical, and irrefutable. It wasn't a technical glitch. It was obstruction of justice, a coordinated effort to erase evidence. She opened her encrypted FBI email and began typing to her supervisor, Claire Anderson. Her fingers trembled, but the words came out clearly. It wasn't a mistake. It was sabotage. Attached is metadata analysis proving the deliberate deletion of evidence. I request an immediate preservation order for all records in the Guardian system. As soon as she sent it, a movement outside caught her attention. She approached the window. A police car was parked across the street. Unit 47, the same license plate, the same vehicle used for the stop. His jaw clenched. The reflection in the glass showed his face calm, firm, impassive. They were trying to intimidate her. But they made the worst possible mistake. They left a digital trail. And digital trails were exactly what she knew how to follow. The bruises on his throat would disappear. The evidence, if well preserved, would last forever. That night, Jennifer was sitting on the patterned sofa in Dorothy's house with the news on. The logo for CNN's Direct Line Tonight program flashed on the screen. The host, Richard Palmer, introduced the evening's guest, Major Sharon Vance, representative of the Dallas Police Union. The woman appeared dressed in her formal uniform, her grey hair pulled back in a stiff bun, her insignia polished under the studio lights. Her expression was one of carefully rehearsed concern. "Let's be clear, Richard," Vance began, leaning forward. "What we had was a potentially dangerous situation. An uncooperative driver claiming to be from the FBI, with no way to prove it at the time." Dorothy's hand squeezed her daughter's. "Lord, give me strength," he murmured. "This woman showed a fake badge to resist arrest," the Major continued, her composure carefully considered. "The officers followed protocol to protect themselves and the public. Until the investigation is complete, any judgment is irresponsible." "A fake badge," Jennifer repeated, incredulous. His cell phone vibrated, and it vibrated again and again. A flood of notifications, messages, mentions, comments. Another anti-police activist playing the victim. I should have obeyed and avoided the confusion. "That badge is from a costume shop." Dorothy looked at her daughter, her face tense. "Don't let it affect you, darling. That's what they want." "I know, Mom," he replied, hanging up the phone, but his eyes remained fixed on the screen. Richard Palmer, to his credit, tried to fight back. "But Major, there is a video showing what happened." "It's a partial video," Vance retorted. "Edited segments don't show the whole story. Sergeant Sullivan is an exemplary veteran with over 15 years of service. He deserves a fair trial." The image froze on her face, confident, rehearsed, cold. Jennifer stood up abruptly. "I need air." She went out onto the back porch. The night air was heavy and damp, and each heartbeat made her bruises throb. The city seemed asleep, but she felt the weight of being watched. The following morning brought renewed outrage. Prosecutor Douglas Crawford, whom Jennifer knew from interagency meetings, appeared in the newspapers with a carefully measured statement. "Although the public prosecutor's office takes all allegations of misconduct seriously, we urge caution. It is necessary to analyze the facts before drawing conclusions. The review process will be thorough." Jennifer dropped the cup with a dry thud. She knew the game. Crawford was campaigning for re-election as district attorney and needed to appear balanced. But she knew the truth. His silence wasn't prudence. It was a political calculation. On the encrypted laptop, Jennifer Hayes opened the public campaign finance records, and there was the missing link. Large donations from shell companies connected to Vincent Castellano, owner of a towing company that held exclusive contracts with the Dallas Police Department in 3 precincts of the city. The soft click of the mouse echoed through the silence of the early morning, until the ring of the cell phone interrupted everything. Rachel Torres' name appeared on the screen. "Hello, Rachel?" The voice on the other end was trembling. "A man showed up at my house. He said he was a private investigator. He wanted to talk about the video." Jennifer straightened up in her chair. "When did this happen?" "Right now," Rachel replied, between sobs. "He knew where I live, the model of my car. He said it would be better for everyone if I reconsidered what I saw." "Are you in a safe place?" "I'm at my sister's house," she replied, breathless. "But I'm scared, Jennifer. I think I should delete the video." "Absolutely not. Listen carefully to what I'm going to say. You did nothing wrong. This video is proof, and I won't let anything happen to you." Jennifer took a deep breath, choosing each word carefully. "Send me your sister's address. I'll call the witness protection team and make sure they put surveillance on her right away. Then we can meet in a safe place and discuss how to preserve the images, okay?" "Do you promise they won't hurt me?" "I promise. You're under federal protection now." Jennifer's voice softened. "You were brave to record. Now let me be brave for you." When she hung up, she stood in front of the bathroom mirror. The bruises were beginning to fade, but the fury in her eyes was more intense than ever. She touched her own reflection, remembering how many times she had heard that same fear. In Rachel's voice, In Dorothy's generation, in so many women who had learned to swallow injustice because fighting seemed impossible. "They want war," he murmured. "Then they'll get it." Back at the table, he opened a hidden folder on his encrypted hard drive. Chain of evidence. Subfolders were already waiting to be filled in. Metadata from body cameras, testimonies, financial records, old complaints. It was her new trench, and she was ready for war. The morning sun had not yet touched the windows of the FBI building when Jennifer swiped her access card through the reader. The night watchman, Stanley Morris, looked up from his newspaper. "Agent Hayes, I thought you were on leave." "I just need to check one thing, Stanley." She smiled slightly, touching her still sensitive neck. "I won't be long." "Between us, what they did to you isn't right," he said sincerely. "Take care of yourself, okay?" "It can leave." The hallway was empty. The fluorescent lights switched on automatically, and the echo of her heels broke the silence as she walked to her desk. The computer turned on. A blue glow filled her face. She began typing the evidence preservation order, cold, meticulous, with no room for maneuver. I knew it well. Many cases collapsed due to system failures or server cleanup. This time, there would be no loopholes. Recipients: Internal Affairs Division, Dallas Police Department, Federal Coordination of Digital Supervision, FBI IT Department. Subject: Immediate Preservation Notice, Operation Meadowbrook 2026-0719. In accordance with the ongoing federal investigation, this notification mandates the immediate preservation of all physical and digital evidence related to the July 19th encounter involving Sergeant Derek Sullivan. She listed them one by one: dashboard images, body cameras, radio transmissions, dispatch records, automatic license plate reading, shift reports. But the secret lay in the technical details: exact date and time, server addresses, access logs, backup protocols, the blind spots that no one could erase without leaving a trace. The phone vibrated. A message. Tyler Brennan. "Metro Diner, back table, bring your laptop." Jennifer clicked send, saved the document, and gathered her things. Metro Diner was 3 blocks away, a rundown diner with cracked vinyl benches and bitter coffee that could peel the paint off the walls. Perfect for discreet conversations. Tyler was already there, hunched over the table, his fingers drumming on the Formica surface. His Department of Public Safety badge hung from his neck. As she approached, he looked up nervously. "Did someone follow you?" she asked in a low voice. "No," she replied, and she motioned to the waitress. "A strong coffee, please." What did you find out?" asked Jennifer Hayes, opening her laptop on the sticky table at the Metro Diner. Tyler Brennan pulled a flash drive from his coat pocket and slid it toward her. "It's worse than I imagined. These aren't random system failures." Jennifer plugged in the flash drive, her eyes fixed on the lines of code unfolding on the screen. Server records, access logs, time changes, all colorfully noted in Tyler's meticulous style. "Look at these patterns," he said, pointing to the graphs. "The changes always happen in the early morning, between 2 and 4. They call it the maintenance window. But look what they really do." She held her breath. The record showed repeated changes in vehicle data, stolen car alerts appearing and disappearing, warrants being created and deleted minutes later. "They're manipulating the system," Jennifer whispered, "fabricating crimes out of thin air. And this has been going on for months." Tyler swallowed hard. "Your license plate marked as stolen. It wasn't by mistake. Someone put it there manually, probably minutes before Sergeant Sullivan checked the number." Her coffee arrived, but it remained untouched. Her mind was racing. "Who has access to this?" "That's the problem," Tyler replied, glancing around nervously. "It's not coming from the police terminals. Someone is using city infrastructure administrator credentials. High-level access. Can you track it?" I'm trying, but—" He hesitated. "My cousin, Sergeant Julia, mentioned something. She said Sullivan isn't the only one. There's a whole group that knows when certain license plates enter the system. They plan their approaches based on the maintenance." Jennifer's fingers raced across the keyboard. She cross-referenced patrol schedules with changes in the database. "Look at this," he said. "Sullivan's approaches increased soon after these changes." Tyler nodded. "And always in the vicinity of Vincent Castellanos' towing yards. I noticed that too." The blue screen reflected in her eyes as she copied the files, encrypted them, and sent them to secure servers. "This is serious, Tyler. They're going to notice. Jennifer, be careful. These people have influence." A shrill alarm cut through the air. The sound was coming from the parking lot. They both stood up and looked out the window. Two hooded men were running from Jennifer's red sedan. All four tires were completely flat, the car tilted on the asphalt. She took a deep breath, calmly and surgically putting away the laptop. "They're watching me right now." Tyler turned pale. "These people are dangerous." "Then let them watch," she replied coldly. "That way they'll see what justice looks like when it comes their way." The diner's bell rang as she left, her phone already in hand. "It's not Castellanos' company," he murmured. "It never is." Night fell on Dorothy Hayes' brick house, lit only by the porch lamp. Pastor Andrew Miller climbed the steps with a covered pot in his hands. The veteran's badge emblazoned on his lapel reflected the yellow light. "Mrs. Dorothy," he said, smiling, "I brought my mother's recipe. It heals the body and the spirit." In the room, Jennifer sat surrounded by papers, reports, and charts scattered across the coffee table. The bruises on her neck were already fading, but her gaze remained firm. "Agent Hayes," greeted the pastor, placing the soup on the table. "How are you?" "It's better now that we're making progress," he replied, "even though they punctured my tires earlier today." "Mercy," murmured Dorothy, grabbing bowls from the kitchen. Andrew shook his head, sitting down. "They're scared. That means you're close to the truth." Jennifer extended some rolls. "Look at these patterns. Every time a car is reported stolen, it's the same profile. Black driver, clean record, regular route." The pastor adjusted his glasses and examined the data. "This reminds me of 92, 93. We had a similar wave. Deacon Williams' daughter was pulled over 3 times in 1 month. They said the car was stolen. She spent almost $1,000 on towing." "From Castellano Towing and Logistics?" Jennifer asked, leaning forward. "It's always him," the pastor confirmed. "Back then, Vincent wasn't powerful yet, but he was already building his empire." Jennifer rested her chin in her hands, staring intently at the papers. Now she knew. What seemed like an isolated case of corruption was actually a network, and she was about to pull the thread that would make everything collapse. "All the stolen cars ended up in his yard," said Pastor Andrew Miller, his voice heavy with decades of witnessed injustice. "People had to choose. Either they paid Vincent Castellanos exorbitant fees, or they lost their car." Dorothy returned from the kitchen with steaming bowls of soup. "That reminds me of something." He disappeared down the hallway and returned with an old leather folder. "I used to write everything down at the Jefferson Elementary Parent-Teacher Association meetings. The parents would come crying." "Crying?" Jennifer asked. "Because they couldn't retrieve their children. Their cars had been towed." Jennifer carefully opened the folder. Her mother's impeccable handwriting documented years of abuse disguised as routine. March 15, 1994, Mary Johnson's car was towed from the church parking lot. Theft was alleged. Fine, $750. April 22, 1994. The Foster siblings arrived late to school. The family car was impounded. Their mother walked 5 kilometers to work. "Look at the addresses," said Pastor Andrew, pointing. "They're always the same patrol zones. The same sectors where Sergeant Sullivan is working today." Jennifer opened her laptop and typed quickly. "The technology is different now, but the system is the same," he murmured. "Before it was paper. Now it's databases." She cross-referenced dates and records, the cursor blinking over truths that time had not erased. Every false theft report leads to an approach. The approach leads to a tow truck. The tow truck leads to fees. And the fees become profit. "And Castellano's companies have exclusive contracts with the city," the pastor added. "This has been happening for over 20 years. Dorothy spread more papers on the table. "Here is the minutes from the meeting where we tried to question the fees." The city council shelved the project without explanation. "Because Castellano buys silence," Jennifer said grimly. "Campaign donations, fake consulting work. He finances the system." "And the system pays back," the pastor replied. "The police gain numbers, the businessman gains millions, and the politicians gain votes. Meanwhile, our people pay the price." Jennifer opened a spreadsheet. "Look at these numbers. In 5 years, Castellano's companies made over $12 million in yard fees alone. And that's just what's declared." Dorothy put her hand to her mouth. "My God!" "And Sullivan is their best salesman," Jennifer continued. "His approaches result in more arrests than any other officer. Now we know why." Pastor Andrew nodded gravely. "They target those who can't fight back. Single mothers, the elderly, workers, people who don't have the time or money to defend themselves." Dorothy looked at the papers in her hands. "I spent years thinking I was just writing down stories. I didn't know I was gathering evidence." "The community's memory is proof," the pastor said firmly. "Our people remember every humiliation, every stolen penny. And now we have proof." Jennifer stared at the wall of documents. Her mother's notes, Tyler's data, the testimonies, the standards. Decades of systematic exploration, now exposed to the light. "They built an empire based on fear," he murmured. The pastor leaned forward, his eyes tired but steady, then refuted with the truth. The soup grew cold as they worked late into the night, cross-referencing spreadsheets, connecting names, piecing together a case that could change the city. Outside, a car drove slowly past, its headlights sweeping across the windows. But inside, 3 generations of resistance, mother, daughter, and pastor, were forging a path to justice. 2 days later, Jennifer Hayes was walking along the Lakeview Park Trail, the afternoon sun reflecting off the mirrored surface of the lake. Runners passed by, headphones on, oblivious to the tension that accompanied her. He chose a discreet bench, half hidden under the willow trees, and checked his cell phone. A message from Tyler Brennan had arrived an hour earlier. "Meet my cousin, Willow South Bank, 4 p.m. She's taking a big risk." Right on time, Tyler appeared, hands in his pockets, a look of apprehension on his face. Behind him, a woman in civilian clothes was approaching. Even from a distance, Jennifer recognized his stature, upright posture, attentive gaze, poise ready to react. It was Sergeant Julia Brennan, Tyler's cousin, and one of the few who still believed in the uniform as a symbol of justice. As she approached, Jennifer felt the weight of the moment. From then on, nothing would be just an investigation anymore. It would be war. "Agent Hayes," Tyler Brennan murmured, glancing cautiously around. "This is Sergeant Julia Brennan." Julia didn't extend her hand. Clever. No physical contact, no proof that the encounter had ever taken place. "Let's be quick," she said, her voice almost lost in the distant sounds of the children in Lakeview Park. "I shouldn't be here." The 3 sat on the bench under the willows, feigning the nonchalance of old friends chatting outdoors. Julia kept her face slightly turned away, always watching the main path where runners and families passed by. "Did you find anything in the system?" Jennifer asked, getting straight to the point. Julia's fingers clenched. "Internal audit files," he replied. They're supposed to track who's entering theft alerts into the vehicle databases. Most police officers register 1 or 2 legitimate cases a month, but Sergeant Sullivan does 20 to 30 a week, always in the same areas, always with the same driver profiles. Jennifer kept her face impassive, but felt her stomach churn. A consistent pattern. "And it's getting worse," Julia added, looking around before continuing. "The alerts appear minutes before his shifts. It's like creating an advanced justification to stop whoever he wants." "Do you have proof of that?" Jennifer asked. Tyler took a small USB drive out of his pocket and placed it on the seat. "It's all here. Date and time logs, police IDs, patrol maps." Julia managed to get temporary access to the internal server. "If they track us down, we're screwed." "They won't track us," Jennifer assured firmly. "I know how to protect sources. But why take the risk now?" Sergeant Julia's professional mask broke for a moment. "Because that's wrong." His voice came out choked with suppressed anger. "I came in to protect people, not to help towing company owners rob families." He took a deep breath. "And because Sullivan isn't the only one, there's a whole network involved." Jennifer nodded, her voice deep. "But you can't testify." "I know," Julia replied, bitterly acknowledging the truth. "If I talk, they'll destroy me. Transfer to a high-risk area, violent partners, lost evidence. In the end, they either expel you or make you disappear." A child's laughter echoed in the distance, contrasting with the tension. A family was feeding ducks on the edge of the lake. The serene scene seemed like an unreal picture against the somber conversation. "I understand," Jennifer said, lowering her voice. "Your anonymity is guaranteed, and what you brought will be crucial." It was then that the sound of gravel breaking the silence came from behind them. An unmarked black SUV appeared on the park's service road, speeding along too fast. The three exchanged glances. "FBI!" Jennifer shouted, jumping up suddenly. "Stay behind me!" The 2 men who jumped out of the vehicle ignored the warning. The first one went straight for her purse. The second one tried to grab her by the arms. Fatal error. Tactical defense training kicked in before the thinking even started. Jennifer turned her body and plunged the keys into the attacker's wrist, hearing the dry crack of the bone. He yelled. She pushed him, and the second man came from behind. He took a direct elbow to the stomach and a knee to the face that made him fall. Julia, with her weapon already half raised, pushed Tyler behind her, covering the perimeter. But the attackers didn't stay. They ran back to the SUV, leaving a trail of blood on the gravel road. The vehicle sped off, without license plates. The whole thing lasted less than 20 seconds. Jennifer adjusted her jacket, taking a deep breath. His cut lip bled slightly, and his knuckles began to throb, but his eyes remained cold. Julia watched her, shocked by the woman's relentless calm. "This wasn't random," Jennifer said, wiping the blood with a tissue. "They wanted the flash drive." He lifted the small device between his fingers. "How can you be so calm?" Julia asked. "Because that confirms everything," he replied, putting the flash drive away. "No one sends professionals unless we're getting close to the truth." Julia hesitated. "I should document this." "No," Jennifer said firmly, her gaze piercing. "You were never here. This meeting never happened. Get back to your work. Keep your head down. I'll take care of things here." Julia nodded slowly, putting the gun back in its holster. "Be careful. They're not messing around. Me neither." Tyler, still pale, picked up his backpack. "I'll walk you to the car." "In different directions," Jennifer corrected. "Separate exits. Normal routine." They dispersed among the passers-by in the park. The family continued feeding the ducks, unaware that just a few meters away, the truth had almost been forcibly silenced. Jennifer touched her cracked lip, the metallic taste reminding her that she was alive and hunted. The flash drive felt heavier in my pocket, pulsing like an electronic heart, laden with secrets, secrets that someone was willing to kill to keep hidden. The air conditioning at the FBI regional headquarters in Dallas hummed intensely, turning the conference room into a cold and impersonal space. Jennifer Hayes was seated at the long table, surrounded by meticulously organized stacks of documents, printed reports, and her open laptop. The morning light streamed through the aluminum blinds, drawing streaks of light and shadow across her face and across the evidence she had risked her life to gather. Standing by the window, Supervisor Claire Anderson watched silently, arms crossed, as three supervisors from the Federal Comptroller General's office settled into the chairs opposite her. Their suits were expensive, their expressions impenetrable. "Thank you for coming with so little warning," Jennifer began, her voice firm, despite the cut on her lips still aching from the previous night's attack. She connected the laptop to the projector, and the FBI seal was reflected on the wall. "I uncovered a scheme of deliberate manipulation in the vehicle signaling system used by the Dallas Police Department." The chief supervisor, Robert Sullivan, adjusted his glasses. "Agent Hayes, we know you've been through a traumatic incident." "This isn't about me," she interrupted, opening a data spreadsheet with flashing columns. "Observe. Each flag issued by Sergeant Derek Sullivan occurs within specific maintenance windows that coincide with a known technical vulnerability in the system." She showed the code, the lines with timestamps. "I documented this flaw 2 years ago when I conducted a federal audit. During those few minutes, any alteration can be made without leaving a trace." Auditor Elaine Porter began tapping her pen on the table. "That's merely circumstantial." "Then explain this to me," Jennifer retorted, projecting a digital map onto the wall. Red circles lit up, revealing a disturbing pattern. All the stolen vehicles were stopped in these 3 areas. All were towed by the same company, Vincent Castellanos, and all were released upon payment of illegal fees. Supervisor Claire approached the projection. "That's more than a coincidence." "It's a staged operation," Jennifer confirmed, clicking on a video. "Here's proof that it's intentional." On screen, the animation showed the timing of the false insertions coinciding with the start of Sergeant Derek Sullivan's shifts. They create their own motives for the approaches. They fabricate crimes to justify profit. Robert Sullivan cleared his throat. "Do you have witnesses?" "I have something better." Jennifer opened another folder. "Internal records showing which officers accessed the system. Plus, I have video footage of one of those encounters. Mine." "The strangulation incident?" Elaine Porter asked, raising her eyebrows. "The same one where they tried to erase the images?" "Exactly," Jennifer replied. "They used the same system flaw to disable the body cameras. But a witness recorded everything from outside." The third supervisor, who had been silent until then, finally spoke. "This is serious, but there is a protocol." "I know the protocols," Jennifer interrupted. "I also know that they often serve to protect structures, not people." Robert took a deep breath. "We'll analyze your file carefully, 2 weeks at most." Jennifer slammed her hand on the table, the sound echoing in the cold room. 2 weeks is enough time for them to erase everything. They've already started. "Yesterday, 2 men tried to attack me because of this." Claire straightened up suddenly. "You didn't report that." "Because I thought I had dealt with the situation, but it's escalating. Every hour of silence is a window for obstruction." Elaine raised her hands, annoyed. "We have dozens of cases underway, officer." "How many of these cases involve police corruption with direct digital evidence? How many include videos, forensics, and an attack on a federal agent?" Jennifer's voice was a controlled thunderclap. The silence in the room was palpable. Robert looked away, visibly uncomfortable. "We understand your frustration." "No, you don't understand." Jennifer gathered the papers and closed her laptop. "But you will understand when I publish this." Elaine stiffened. "Are you threatening us, Agent Hayes?" "No." She calmly put the laptop away. I'm ensuring transparency. If you choose inaction, I will choose the truth." Claire accompanied her to the elevator. "They're not entirely wrong about the procedures," he said quietly. "Procedures protect systems," Jennifer replied. "People need real protection." As the elevator descended, her cell phone vibrated in her hand. 3 missed calls from Rachel Torres. When he answered, he heard fear on the other end. "Jennifer, people are looking for me. They spoke to my landlord, my neighbors. They know I was the one who recorded the video." Jennifer clenched her fist. "Where are you now?" "At my sister's house, but they found out my work address." "Stay where you are. I'll send someone immediately." She hung up, tried calling Claire. No answer. As he left the building, he noticed the unmarked silver car 3 vehicles behind him, reflecting the same morning sun. Jennifer made 3 random turns through Meadowbrook. The car remained there. The chase had begun, and now there was no turning back. At home, Jennifer Hayes locked the door and turned on her secure computer. He plugged in one of the several identical flash drives on the table, initiating the process of encrypting the images recorded by Rachel Torres. The software began to work, the hum of the processor filling the small apartment as the files were copied to multiple drives, each with different keys and its own security protocols. Your phone vibrated. New messages. From Julia Brennan. "They're taking me off the streets. They cancelled my shifts. Transfer to the records department." Next up, another one from Tyler Brennan. "System access blocked. Looking for another job." The soft sound of the encryption was the only constant noise. Jennifer brought her fingers to her still cracked lip, feeling the sting of the blow from the previous night. They thought fear would be enough, that bureaucratic delays would bury everything. But the truth was alive, and now there were copies. With meticulous care, he labeled each USB drive with short codes and dates. "Let them try to erase it," he murmured. "Let them try to bury what has already escaped." Outside, the unmarked silver car remained parked in front of the building. Jennifer didn't close the curtains. Let them watch. Let them wonder what she was planning. He wrote down the last encryption key in his notebook, checking each character 3 times. They believed that fear always won. It was time to show what the exhibition could do. Night fell over Meadowbrook, and the cold light from the screen reflected off her glasses. 3 draft emails lay open, each addressed to a different journalist, chosen with surgical precision. No ties to local politicians, no history of censorship, and a reputation for standing up to giants. The attached file contained everything: Rachel's high-resolution video, date and timestamps, internal audits, patrol reports, and a timeline linking each name to the corruption that fueled Vincent Castellanos' empire. She had cleaned the metadata and routed everything through secure, untraceable servers. "Send," he whispered, clicking 3 times. "Emails have disappeared into cyberspace." There was no turning back. Her cell phone vibrated again. "Dorothy Hayes. Come have coffee tomorrow. You won't want to miss it for anything." Sleep came in fragments, interspersed with alerts and notifications. At dawn, Jennifer drove to her mother's house, the streets still damp from the early morning. When he parked, his phone exploded with notifications. The news had leaked. Channel 4 News displayed the images with devastating clarity. Warning: graphic content. The following video shows the moment when federal agent Jennifer Hayes was immobilized with a chokehold by Sergeant Derek Sullivan during what appeared to be a routine stop. The screen split. On one side, Jennifer struggled to breathe. On the other, the federal badge gleamed in the sun. The contrast was brutal. In the kitchen, Dorothy served the coffee, her gaze fixed on the TV. Social media was exploding. Justice for Jennifer was becoming a national trend. Hundreds of people began gathering in front of the neighborhood police station, holding up signs and demanding punishment. On Network 7 America, Major Sharon Vance, a police spokesperson, trembled as she faced the cameras. "This is a coordinated attack against security forces. The video has been edited." "Major, we have the complete recording, uncut. Are you saying that Agent Hayes's badge was digitally inserted?" The presenter interrupted. Vance's face paled. "No comment." Dorothy squeezed her daughter's hand. "Daughter, the whole country is watching." Outside the courthouse, Assistant District Attorney Daniel Monroe evaded reporters, getting into his car without answering. And at noon, Councilman Ethan Rivera appeared on national television. "In light of the shocking evidence, I demand an immediate public oversight hearing. The people deserve answers." Jennifer's phone rang. Ira Claire Anderson. The supervisors expedited his case. Funny how sunlight changes priorities. "Light is the best disinfectant," Jennifer replied. "Be careful," Claire warned. "They're trapped, and trapped people are dangerous." The following hours were a whirlwind. Other victims began to come forward. Drivers, housewives, delivery people, identical stories, cars towed, false accusations, fear. Vincent Castellano's empire has become the target of a formal investigation. Sergeant Julia Brennan gave an anonymous interview confirming the internal pressure for results, and Pastor Andrew Miller called in, visibly emotional. "My church is bringing the community together this weekend. People want to talk. Your courage opened the door." As night fell, Jennifer was exhausted but with a newfound serenity. In her mother's kitchen, the smell of roast meat and vegetables filled the air. Seated at the table, the two remained silent for a moment, listening only to the voices coming from the TV. A country finally waking up to the truth. They ate in silence with the TV on mute, but images of the protests still flickered on the screen. Crowded streets, raised signs, sirens echoing in the distance. "Your father would be so proud," said Dorothy, reaching across the table. "He always said, 'Truth needs warriors.'" Jennifer nodded, her throat tight. Her father, a civil rights lawyer, had fought the same battles decades earlier, against the same forces disguised as authority. "It's not over yet." "No," replied the mother, with a tired smile. "But for the first time in years, I feel that perhaps something is going to change." They got up together, washing the dishes side by side, the sink illuminated by the soft glow of the TV. Outside, the stars breaking through the city fog seemed a reminder that even in darkness there was resistance. For the first time since the attack, Jennifer's shoulders relaxed slightly. The familiar weight of his badge, now absent, was still felt on his hip, not as a shield, but as a promise. She had transformed pain into purpose. The system that pretended to protect was now facing the mirror of truth. Outside, a car engine hummed as it idled. But that night, Jennifer Hayes refused to give up the little peace she had gained. She helped her mother put away the leftovers from dinner, and the silence between them became a silent prayer, an invisible barrier against the chaos they knew was lurking. Hope had this sound. Fragile, yet stubborn, like the first breath after a long time underwater. It didn't matter what tomorrow brought. That night, the truth had breathed, and the country, without even knowing it, had blinked at it. The following morning, the sun was streaming through the windows of the FBI regional headquarters in Dallas when Jennifer Hayes parked her car in the visitor parking lot. News vans lined the sidewalks. Satellite dishes pointed to the sky like metal towers. She could see Claire Anderson waiting at the entrance, her face tense and her arms crossed. She had barely opened the door when a crowd of reporters surrounded her. Microphones, cameras, and aggressive voices fired questions like bullets. "Agent Hayes, what is your response to the union's accusations? Has this become a federal investigation?" Can you confirm that there is evidence of systemic abuse? Jennifer maintained a neutral expression, the training in action. No comment at the moment, he replied, making his way to the lobby with Claire close behind. The building's icy air enveloped her like a wall. The agent's expressions behind the counter were unreadable, some sympathetic, others stern, perhaps fearful. Claire led her to a meeting room, but the sound of the TV on in the hallway made them stop. On the screen, Deputy District Attorney Daniel Monroe appeared at a podium in front of the court. The hair slicked back, the tone controlled. After evaluating the available evidence, I announce that Officer Jennifer Hayes is under investigation for falsely representing an authority and obstructing justice during a legitimate police encounter. The room seemed to spin. Jennifer braced her hand against the wall to avoid falling. There is evidence suggesting that the officer used false credentials to interfere with a regular operation of the Dallas Police Department. The district attorney's office takes these allegations very seriously. He's lying, Jennifer whispered. Claire held his arm. We need to get out of here now. But before they could get into the conference room, the lobby doors burst open. 3 agents from the Federal Internal Affairs Department entered, wearing dark suits and displaying their badges. Ahead of them was Agent Marcus Shaw, with a cold gaze and an impeccably neutral voice. Agent Hayes, I need you to hand over your badge and service weapon by the time the investigation is complete. The silence was absolute. Jennifer slowly unbuttoned the name tag holder. His fingers trembled slightly as he handed over the symbol he had carried for over 10 years. Then the weapon, the weight absent from my hip, felt more painful than the suspension itself. She's suspended with full pay, Shaw said, and prohibited from leaving the jurisdiction without authorization. Your email and building access credentials have been deactivated. Claire tried to protest, but the agent was curt. This comes from the top. The order is to comply. On the other side of the glass, reporters were crowding together. Flashes blinked like lightning as Jennifer Hayes, for the first time, found herself stripped of authority before the very cameras that had exposed her tormentors. The cell phone vibrated. News notification. Tyler Brennan. The police raided my house. They're taking everything. Below, another message. Julia has been transferred. Night shift, industrial district. Locker already emptied. Jennifer felt her blood run cold. He tried to access Rachel Torres' file, the last living copy of the video. But the system crashed. A message flashed on the screen. Access denied, credentials expired. The siege had begun, and this time, the enemy was inside their own house. Error messages flooded the screen. The uploads, the links, the copies, everything had vanished, blocked under the cold warning of removed for copyright infringement. They're erasing everything, Jennifer Hayes murmured, feeling her stomach clench. Claire escorted her to the car, keeping the body between herself and the cameras that were piling up in front of FBI headquarters. Go home. Don't talk to anyone. Let me use my channels. The return trip passed in a blur of lights and horns. The apartment felt different, too quiet, too dark. The empty space on the desk where her name tag holder had once rested felt like a hole in her very soul. They think they've won, he whispered to the empty space. My phone vibrated. Message from Tyler Brennan. They lost a copy. Jennifer sank into her chair. In less than 12 hours, they had taken away her authority, undone her network, and begun to rewrite history. The machine wasn't just reacting, it was shutting it down. The raid on Tyler's house would serve as a warning to other whistleblowers. Julia's transfer sent a message to anyone still thinking of speaking out. The removal of the videos demonstrated the extent of Vincent Castellano's power over technology companies. And prosecutor Daniel Monroe, with his bogus investigation, offered them the perfect facade of legality. It was a precise operation, orchestrated over decades of impunity. The phone rang twice. Dorothy. Jennifer didn't answer. I couldn't. The sound of the ringing seemed to come from another world. Outside, a news helicopter crisscrossed the Meadowbrook sky, its spotlight sweeping across the building facades. On the internet, trolls were posting attacks. Anti-police activist. He falsified federal credentials. He got what he deserved. The system she had once served loyally was now hunting her down with surgical precision. Everything he believed to be protection, the badge, the reputation, the evidence, had turned into a trap. The phone vibrated again. Unknown number. A single message. You can count on me. Be strong. C. Rachel Torres was still fighting. Jennifer looked at the empty space where the badge used to be. The light from the cell phone cast long shadows on the worn leather. They had taken away his shield, but not their truth. She knew what she had seen. I knew what I had suffered. And now I understood. Their power depended on silence, but machines, no matter how complex, would never understand the power of human dignity. The basement of Hope Baptist Church smelled of old firewood and coffee. A single lamp illuminated the folding table where Jennifer Hayes and her allies gathered, their shadows dancing on the concrete walls. Outside, the sound of crickets mingled with the warm night breeze. Pastor Andrew Miller locked the door after Julia Brennan arrived, the last one to enter. "Nobody followed me," she said, breathless. "I took 3 different routes. I'm clean." Dorothy squeezed her daughter's hand under the table. The absence of the badge weighed even more heavily than the fatigue itself. Rachel nervously fiddled with her phone while Tyler Brennan spread the remaining folders across the table. "They took almost all of my hard drives," Tyler said, "but I kept paper copies. The old-fashioned way." He pulled out stacks of documents, each page stamped and authenticated. Jennifer smiled slightly. "Clever. They can't erase paper." Julia placed her own pile on the table. "Internal memos about towing quotas. I've been collecting them for months." His hands were trembling. "If they find out it was me—" "They won't," Jennifer interrupted firmly. "We protect our own." Dorothy opened her worn leather bag and took out an old folder, filled with minutes and records from the Jefferson Elementary Parent Association. Every parent who lost their car, every complaint, every name, I kept it all. The group started sticking papers to the wall, using tape and string. Under the yellowish light, red lines connected names, neighborhoods, and dates. The pattern was unfolding before their eyes. Years of structured corruption. Pastor Andrew held up a yellowed newspaper clipping. "Look at this. 1989. Police officer Matthew Sloan promoted to captain." Another article. 1990. Patricia Sloan's wedding. Jennifer looked up. "Sloan, like Derek Sullivan." The pastor nodded. "Exactly. Matthew's brother-in-law, Vincent Castellano, secured his first towing contract with the city that same year. This family has been sucking this community dry for over 30 years. Rachel spread screenshots and location timestamps. I have proof from the day my video was made. The time, location, and screenshots of the posts they tried to delete. Julia's eyes scanned the wall covered in documents. The more we dig, the stinkier it gets. "Just last month," Tyler said, "Sullivan's team seized 63 cars." Silence fell for a moment. The sound of the old fan mingled with the distant hum of the city. There, in that stuffy basement, a network of ordinary people was mounting the resistance that the entire city had forgotten how to do. And as Jennifer Hayes watched the mosaic of evidence growing on the wall, she knew. They had tried to erase the truth, but all they managed to do was light it. 58 cars, said Dorothy Hayes, her voice choked with emotion. 58 families whose cars were taken to Vincent Castellano's impound lot. Oh, the owners had to pay thousands to recover their properties. Some never managed to. They lost their jobs. Others could no longer afford to send their children to school. Jennifer stood up, her eyes bright. So here's how it goes. Sergeant Sullivan creates false alerts. Castellano orders the cars towed. Captain Sloan, who's his uncle by marriage, covers it all up, and Prosecutor Monroe turns a blind eye. He picked up his cell phone and opened the campaign donation records. Look at this. Daniel Monroe's biggest donor in the last quarter is the Metropolitan Business Association. Tyler finished, crossing his arms. And guess who's the vice president of that association's board? Vincent Castellano. Jennifer took a deep breath. They built a perfect machine, police, politics, and money, all connected. That's why they reacted so strongly when we started to threaten the system. Pastor Andrew's voice rang out firmly, breaking the silence of the basement. Machines only work in the dark, daughter. Bring them into God's light and they'll fall apart. Sergeant Julia Brennan nodded. The judicial system is rotten. The Internal Affairs Department is complicit. Even the federal inspectors are stalling. Jennifer raised her head, her tone firm and determined. So we're not going to fight in court. We're going to fight in broad daylight. She began to separate the stacks of documents. Tyler, scan everything, make multiple copies, and use different servers. Julia, we authenticate the audit records. Rachel, send your video to all media outlets, not just the local ones. Pastor Andrew adjusted his hat, his voice deep and measured. I speak to the congregation. The people need to know the true cost of law and order in this city. Dorothy looked at her daughter, her pride barely contained in her teary eyes. What's your plan, daughter? To build such a strong and public case that they can't suppress it. Every victim, every penny, every name exposed. Let the people see who has been robbing them for years. They worked late into the night. The wall of evidence grew until it covered half the basement. Charts, names, receipts, printouts, contracts. Years of corruption were now illuminated by the yellowish lamp of Hope Baptist Church. The police radio in the corner of the table crackled occasionally, reminding them of the danger outside. But inside, among allies, fear seemed distant. Remember, Jennifer said, adjusting the papers, they expect us to play their game. Courts, protocols, deadlines. That's how they control the narrative. Rachel finished, with a new firmness in her voice. So let's tell the story our way. They distributed the copies in sealed folders. Each one took a different route, a different car, alternating paths through the city in the early morning hours. Jennifer Hayes was the last to leave. Pastor Andrew stood beside her, observing the mural of evidence that now covered the basement. My father used to say, sunlight is the best disinfectant. The pastor smiled slightly. And we're about to open all the windows. Above them, the church bell began to ring. 12 solemn chimes cutting through the silence of the night. The sound echoed through the empty streets of Meadowbrook, vibrating in the windows. Each touch seemed like a reminder. The time for shade was running out. Jennifer whispered to herself, her gaze fixed on the door. Then we won't fight in court. We'll fight in broad daylight. Dawn was painting the sky orange and gold as Jennifer Hayes sat down at the kitchen table. 3 laptops open, the coffee already cold. Fingers flew across the keyboards, encrypting files, attaching links, reviewing recipients. Time to light the match, he murmured before clicking. One by one, the confirmed addresses, major national networks, leading newspapers, an independent investigative agency, the Department of Justice, the Federal Ombudsman. The cell phone vibrated. Message from Julia Brennan. Shift change. Now is the time. Jennifer pressed send. 5 windows confirmed the shipment. Packages delivered. Your turn, he replied. In another part of the city, Julia Brennan was parked with the patrol car under a dimly lit lamppost, connecting a USB drive to the department's laptop. Internal records began to be uploaded to an anonymous whistleblowing website. Each entry displayed the names of police officers filing false robbery alerts, always the same ones, Derek Sullivan among them. Her cell phone beeped. Message from Tyler Brennan. Live broadcast in 10 minutes. In the dark apartment, Tyler adjusted the webcam. Monitors open, spreadsheets on display, windows flashing. The audience was already growing. Journalists, activists, teachers, ordinary people. He took a deep breath and began, "Good morning. My name is Tyler Brennan, former IT service provider for the city government. Today I'm going to show you how certain police officers manipulated the data system to persecute innocent citizens." On Tyler's screen, an edited version of the city's data system flickered under the reflection of the blue light. "Look at the police officer's identification number," he said, pointing to the code 4487. "This is Sergeant Derek Sullivan." He clicked on a side tab. Here he inserts false vehicle theft alerts. Look at the time patterns, the neighborhoods. Everything is concentrated in the same areas. The live stream was spreading. Technology reporters began posting frantically about the revelations. Data journalists created charts that showed the overlap between operating hours and the city's poorest neighborhoods. Meanwhile, in a small makeshift office in the back of Hope Baptist Church, Rachel Torres was uploading the original video, the complete high-resolution recording of Sullivan's assault on Jennifer Hayes. The images were sharp, much clearer than the compressed versions that had circulated on social media. Every detail was there, the coup, the resistance, the federal insignia gleaming in the sun. "Lord, give me strength," Rachel murmured, sharing the file with trusted journalists and saving copies on foreign servers. By around 10 in the morning, the story was already dominating the headlines. National networks broadcast the video in sequence. Radio hosts, who had previously defended Sullivan, were now facing lines jammed with angry listeners. Social media exploded with graphics and hashtags. "Justice for Jennifer," "Chakin corrupted system," "Chaki shame trailer." Jennifer's cell phone vibrated. Ira Claire Anderson. "I hope you know what you're doing," she said bluntly. "I'm just letting the truth come out," Jennifer replied. "The FBI's deputy director saw the story. He wants to meet with them." "Great. Tell him to keep monitoring the situation." On TV, Sergeant Mara Kessler, spokesperson for the police union, tried to contain the damage on a morning program, but her practiced smile trembled. "This is a coordinated attack against the security forces," he insisted. "These patterns are distortions made by federal agents out of touch with the reality of the streets." The presenters, armed with data and graphs displayed in real time, confronted her. "Here are the audit records, the towing contracts, and the financial ties to Vincent Castellano." Kessler hardened his tone. "This is federal theater. They're manipulating data to destroy honest police officers." The hashtag Teatro Federal went viral, but not in the way she expected. Within hours, hundreds of citizens began sharing their own stories of cars being wrongfully seized. Religious groups were republishing complaints that had been shelved years ago. Even former police officers began to confirm the patterns in anonymous testimonies. In Jennifer Hayes' apartment, the mural of evidence covered the entire wall. Photographs, documents, lines of red string connecting faces and dates. Years of corruption displayed under the light of makeshift lamps. Dorothy came in, carrying a mug of hot coffee. "You didn't just expose Sullivan, my daughter. You exposed the whole system." Jennifer looked at the mural. The system protected him because he fed it. Take down one link and they all tremble. The phone vibrated again. Julia Brennan. "Police officers are talking about damage control. They're scared." Tyler. "I tried to track the servers. They changed old dates. Too late. We have everything." Rachel. News vans in front of the police station. Protesters too. It's happening. Jennifer took a deep breath, the taste of the coffee now sweeter than ever. Each folder on the wall represented a victim. Each red line, a thread in the web that has suffocated their community for decades, and now those wires were snapping in broad daylight. Dorothy placed her hand on his shoulder. "Are you all right, daughter?" "I am," Jennifer replied, touching the empty space where the name tag used to be. "I can only think about the people who lost everything because of them. Jobs, cars, dignity. Some never recovered." "But now everyone knows," said the mother. Jennifer nodded, her gaze fixed on the photo of Derek Sullivan, pasted in the center of the mural. The man who tried to silence her now symbolized the fall of an empire, and around his face other connections emerged. Union representatives, construction company owners, municipal politicians, all intertwined in the exposed web. The headlines on the laptop screen multiplied. Stories of corruption, charts, timelines, analyses. The truth was moving faster than they could distort it. There were no more shadows to hide what they had done. Jennifer whispered, staring at Sullivan's face pinned to the mural. "Your turn, Derek." The tension was palpable in the city council. Every seat occupied, people standing in the aisles, the air thick and stuffy. The fans spun slowly, pushing away the heat and the anxiety. In the front row, Pastor Andrew Miller and Dorothy Hayes sat side by side, composed and serene. Security guards flanked the doors. TV cameras and reporters crowded the back of the hall. In the center, a long table covered with papers and microphones. Behind her were Jennifer Hayes, Rachel Torres, Julia Brennan, and Tyler Brennan, the four who had challenged the machine. The murmur of the crowd ceased when the session's president banged the gavel. "I hereby declare open the public hearing on abuses and corruption in the vehicle impoundment system." Jennifer arranged the papers in front of her. Outside, the bells of a nearby church echoed in the same rhythm as her heartbeat. The war had begun, and this time it would be fought in broad daylight. Across the room, Sergeant Derek Sullivan stretched between the lawyer and the union representative. The pride was still there, but without the same brilliance. His sweaty face betrayed that he knew the game had changed. The chairman's gavel struck forcefully. "This public oversight hearing is officially underway. All witnesses have been sworn in. Agent Jennifer Hayes, you may begin." She stood up. Her heart was racing, but her voice was firm, resonating clearly through the crowded hall. "Council members, what happened to me was not an isolated incident. It was part of a systematic pattern of abuse that has been destroying communities like mine for years." She waved to Tyler Brennan, who projected the first slide onto the giant screen. "Here is Sergeant Sullivan's activity log, obtained through forensic audit. In 3 years, he flagged 847 vehicles as suspected of being stolen." Jennifer paused. Of these, 92% belonged to black or Latino drivers, and 89% were towed by companies linked to Vincent Castellano. A murmur echoed through the auditorium. Sullivan shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Each tow truck generated average fees of $750, Jennifer continued. "Over 3 years, that represents millions extorted from low-income families based on false alerts and coerced approaches." Sergeant Julia Brennan then took the floor, her voice trembling but determined. "I patrolled with those people. I saw Captain Matthew Sloan impose monthly quotas for seizures and fines. Police officers who met their targets were given easy shifts and overtime pay. Those who questioned the rules were thrown into dangerous areas without backup." Captain Mara Kessler tried to defend herself, but the session chairman raised his hand. "You'll have your turn, Captain," Tyler resumed, designing a new chart. "These are the donation records for Prosecutor Daniel Monroe's campaign." He enlarged the screen. Each increase in donations coincides with decisions to dismiss complaints of illegal seizure. The deposits came from shell companies linked to Vincent Castellano's trailer empire. The room became stuffy. Dorothy wiped her eyes with a handkerchief. Pastor Andrew held her hand tightly. Silence has become a collective burden. Jennifer took a deep breath. Now, I'd like to show you the uncut recording of my meeting with Sergeant Sullivan. The lights went out. The projected image filled the wall, sharp, in high resolution. There was Jennifer, standing calmly as she approached the police, hands visible, a serene voice. The badge clearly on display. And then the blow, the policeman's arm choking her, the dry sound of violence echoing through the room. Some of the council members looked away, others clenched their fists. When the lights came back on, Rachel Torres stood up. I recorded this video. I recorded it because I've seen too many people silenced in the same way. Agent Hayes could have died that day. How many people have suffered the same fate? No badge, no camera, no voice. The chairman of the session leaned forward. Sergeant Sullivan, do you wish to respond? He stood up abruptly, his face red, sweat running down his collar. She tried to grab my gun. I was just defending myself. This is all a setup. Jennifer stared at him without blinking. The video doesn't show that. The room fell silent. Sullivan took a step forward, uncontrollably. This video has been tampered with. You're persecuting me. Remove the police officer immediately, ordered the president. 2 security guards stepped forward. The audience started booing. The cameras recorded every second as Sullivan was escorted out, still screaming. Mara Kessler tried to contain the damage. Advisors, these agents were simply following protocol. Jennifer turned around slowly. Protocols that violated legal agreements and served to enrich corrupt businessmen and politicians. The head of the Internal Affairs Department, a woman with grey hair and an implacable gaze, stood up. I've seen enough. His voice cut through the air. I request immediate criminal prosecution against Sergeant Derek Sullivan for assault, abuse of authority, and violation of civil rights. And a thorough investigation into Captain Kessler's quota system, Castellano's contracts, and developer Daniel Monroe's campaign finances. For a moment's silence, and then applause. The people stood up. Shouts of justice and enough of impunity echoed through the chamber. Churchgoers waved white handkerchiefs. Pastor Andrew's profound Amen reverberated like thunder. As the security guards dragged Sullivan outside, their eyes met. There was no more arrogance, only fear. He swerved first. Julia squeezed Jennifer's hand under the table. Rachel was crying silently. Tyler leaned back in his chair, exhausted, but with a slight smile. In the gallery, Dorothy watched her daughter, steadfast, serene, indomitable. The woman who, for decades, had learned to swallow insults in order to survive, now saw her own system crumble under the weight of the truth. And in Jennifer Hayes's heart, a certainty burned like fire. Daylight had finally arrived. Pastor Andrew's deep voice echoed above the murmur of the chamber. You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. The chairman's gavel struck again, attempting to restore order as new charges were read. But Jennifer could barely hear. She watched Derek Sullivan and his lawyer back away, not with pleasure or a thirst for revenge, but with the serene gaze of someone who finally saw justice being done. 2 weeks have passed since the hearing. Jennifer stood in front of the mirror in her new office, adjusting her Federal Division of Public Integrity badge. The sun streamed through the blinds, making the golden emblem shine like a promise. His new title shone brightly beneath the name, Commander of the National Task Force Against Institutional Corruption. The bruises on her neck had disappeared, but the memory and the weight of the fight were still there. The cell phone vibrated. Julia Brennan. Did you see the news? Kessler just resigned. Jennifer clicked on the link. On screen, Captain Mara Kessler, formerly the untouchable spokesperson for the police union, was being escorted out of headquarters. Without the confident smile, without the rehearsed speeches, the Internal Affairs investigation confirmed years of illegal quotas, tampering with evidence, and cover-up of abuses. Now, no badge, no pension, no reputation. The headlines scrolled across Jennifer's computer screen. Prosecutor Daniel Monroe abandons campaign amid corruption suspicions. Vincent Castellanos' towing network faces asset freeze and federal impound lots. FBI dismantles extortion and document fraud scheme linked to vehicle seizures. Monroe, the politician who touted himself as a symbol of hardline crime, was now facing the very system he had helped to corrupt. And Vincent Castellano, the man who turned the despair of poor neighborhoods into profit, watched his empire decay. The yards were closed off, the accounts frozen, the partners on the run. The desk phone rang. "Pastor Andrew." "We'll be ready whenever you are, my daughter." Jennifer smiled, tired but relieved. "I'm already on my way." The parking lot at Hope Baptist Church was full. Entire families occupied the wooden benches, their faces marked by years of struggle. Elderly people who had lost their cars due to fabricated accusations, parents who had to choose between paying illegal fees or feeding their children. Young people who have learned to fear the reflection of blue lights in their rearview mirrors. Pastor Andrew stepped up to the pulpit. Their service medals gleamed under the soft light of the stained glass window. Behind him, a table covered with stacks of certified checks, the result of a court decision. "Today," the pastor began, his voice echoing through the sanctuary, "justice ceases to be just a word and becomes something we can touch. These checks don't heal wounds, but they show that God does not remain silent in the face of injustice." Soft applause. One by one, residents went up to the altar. Mrs. Celia, who had lost her car on her daughter's wedding day. Mr. Raymond, a bricklayer, was out of work for months after his truck, containing his tools, was towed away. Young Marcus, whose first car was taken away the same week he started driving school. Each person received not just a check, but a piece of the dignity that had been stolen from them. At the back of the church, Julia Brennan stood in civilian clothes, silently observing everything. Jennifer and Julia's eyes met, exchanging a silent recognition. Two women who defied the system and survived to see it fall. A murmur ran between the pews. "Have you heard of Sullivan?" someone asked. Jennifer had heard. Sergeant Derek Sullivan was arrested that morning after the prosecution included charges of organized crime and procedural fraud in the indictment. The images showed him being led away in handcuffs, his head down, without the badge he had used to oppress him. In the background, reporters surrounded him, and flashes exploded like fireworks over a moral funeral. From the pulpit, Pastor Andrew raised his hands, his voice firm and emotional. 2 years ago, this church cried out for justice. Today, our faith has found an answer, and the truth once again proved to be stronger than fear. People stood up, applauding. Dorothy discreetly wiped away tears, watching her daughter through the crowd. The woman who was once nearly silenced now led a national crusade for integrity and dignity. Jennifer took a deep breath, observing the faces around her. Those people were not just beneficiaries, they were survivors. And for the first time in years, the word justice rang true. Former police officer Derek Sullivan has accepted a plea deal. 5 years in federal prison for civil rights violations, without the right to a badge, pension, or any vestige of the power he once used to humiliate innocent people. Her attempt to play the victim crumbled in the face of the weight of the video evidence. Crystal clear images captured by Rachel Torres, now immortalized as a symbol of courage. When the ceremony at Hope Baptist Church ended, Dorothy walked slowly, embracing old acquaintances. These were the same faces she had comforted years before, mothers crying over lost cars, children traumatized by violent encounters, families who had learned to live in fear of the flashing blue lights on street corners. "Ready for a walk?" she asked her daughter. The two walked together along the sunny streets to Vincent Castellano's old impound lot on the outskirts of Dallas. The chains that once held the gate were cut, lying on the ground like relics of a fallen empire. Inside, tow trucks were collecting rows of vehicles to return them to their rightful owners. The fortress of fear had finally fallen. Children ran between the open gates, playing tag where before only shouts and cries could be heard. Men and women, now volunteers, cleaned the rescued cars, removing the dust of their unjust captivity. The signs were shining again. The stories were breathing again. From atop the church tower, Pastor Andrew pulled the bell rope with his firm, calloused hands. The sound echoed deep, rippling through the neighborhood like a hymn. Each stroke of the clock represented justice done, dignity restored, and faith rewarded. Jennifer watched an elderly woman get into her recovered car, the same one that had been towed 4 years ago. She turned the key, and the engine responded with a clean, almost symbolic rumble. Tears streamed down the woman's wrinkled face as the neighbors applauded. The car, kept intact by community mechanics throughout the legal process, seemed resurrected. Dorothy looked at the scene and said, her voice breaking, "Your father used to say that justice is slow, but when the right people push for it, it always arrives." Jennifer nodded, feeling the weight of that phrase resonate with decades of struggle. For a moment he remembered Sullivan's arm pressing against his neck, the muffled sound of his own breathing, the anger, the fear, the silent promise never to be silent. She turned to her mother and replied firmly, with the tone of someone who had transformed pain into purpose. "He tried to suffocate me," and with a slight smile he added, "but instead I made him swallow the truth." The church bells continued ringing, a song of victory, vibrant and heavy with meaning. As mother and daughter watched another car freely leave through the gates, the afternoon light bathed the courtyard, now open to the public. The children's laughter replaced the metallic sound of the chains, and each returned vehicle felt like more than just a recovered possession. It was a life reclaimed. If this story touched you, share it with someone who believes that justice is still possible. And sign up, because sometimes the next truth is closer than it seems.